Hi, welcome to another episode of The Lord's Delight. And today, a life update before we get started. I have recently moved a different phase of life, and I moved from my home country to a completely different continent. And I'm thankful that God is helping me make these podcasts without a break in between because a lot could have happened and did happen. Crazy travel issues, and you all know how crazy traveling during the pandemic is. Thankfully, I've reached the place I'm supposed to, my destination, and so let's get on with today's podcast. The topic is Jesus and women in the Bible. I want to focus on the Gospels, that is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and look at how Jesus interacted with the woman that he came across. Because let's face it, women were not a lot of times treated well in the Old and the New Testament. So I want to see how Jesus treated them. The first incident is in Matthew 9 verses 20 to 22. It is the woman who was bleeding for about 12 years. He did not react with disgust when she reached out and touched him. He didn't think that he had become unclean. Rather, in the whole crowd, he looks at her and calls her a daughter, acknowledging her and giving her dignity that she probably didn't have for a long time because people considered her unclean and they probably were not be willing to be touched by her. If you look at Mark 5 verses 24 to 34, it says she had suffered under the care of many doctors and spent all she had. And now Jesus asks the question of who touched him, giving her a chance to step up and talk to him. In verse 33, it says she was trembling with fear, but Jesus treats her so gently, and that just amazes me. And he says, be freed from your suffering. He understood how much she must have suffered, and he says, be freed from your suffering. Here I see Jesus, who was so gentle with a woman who was desperate to get out of her suffering. He didn't humiliate her, he instead called her daughter, giving her dignity. The second incident is the Syrophoenician or the Canaanite woman. I want to talk about her faith. It happens in Matthew 14, verses 22 to 28. This incident just boggles my mind. When that woman is crying out for mercy, Jesus remains silent. Reminds me of sometimes when I pray and then get no answer, but she keeps crying out, and that annoys the disciples. And so, in turn, the disciples come and bug Jesus. She humbles herself, she kneels down before him and asks, Lord, help me. I'm not sure how I would have handled the answer that Jesus gave. He says, it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to their dogs. It seems so harsh, and that bothered me. I think here he is pointing to the difference between the Jews and the Gentile. That's what I think. I would have been so put off if I was humbling myself and asking for help from somebody who can definitely help, and their answer is something like this. But she doesn't let go, even though it seems so mean. But I know that he's a good God, so I started thinking, why would this incident be something that is recorded by all the disciples? They know his character. Look at her reply. She says, yes, Lord, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. And that's when I realized, in a war of words, this woman won over Jesus. She was so smart that in the war of words, she completely baffled him. And because of the second answer is how I know the question that Jesus asked was a very testing one. Jesus answers by saying, woman, you have great faith. He did not just test men like Job, right? He has also tested women, and he was not shy about matching wits with a woman. He actually accepts defeat, and he says, you have such faith in great answers. And he actually lauds her faith after the answer that almost publicly defeats him. And he still appreciates her. The fact that she humbled herself to the level of a dog and called him master floored him. He granted her request. If you look in Mark 7 verses 24 to 30, the reply of Jesus is given in verse 29. It says, for such a reply you may go, the demon has left your daughter. He was kind of matching wits and trying to provoke her, but she replied so wisely and got what she wanted. This is interesting because whenever Jesus is matching wits with people in the Bible, like the Pharisees or Sadducees, they were always in a dilemma. They didn't know how to answer him. And he locks them into a situation where they become speechless. But here comes a Gentile woman who actually just turns the table on Jesus and he actually applauds her after that. And so that view gave me a whole different perspective of the incident. And let's go to the third incident. It happens in Mark 12, verses 41 to 44, where a poor widow gives two small copper coins as offering. Seeing that, Jesus says that even though some wealthy people had given large amounts of money, the fact that this woman gave out of poverty made her offering more than what all others had put in. He looks at the heart. He didn't look at the amount of the lady or the little copper coins. He did not ridicule her. He says that what she put in was worth more than all the other people what they had put in. So, looking at this incident, to me, he watches whoever gives. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, the guys or Pharisees, men were giving. This was a widow. He didn't make that difference. And what he looks is at the heart. He knew she was a widow and he knew what those points must have meant to her. Like, it would have made a huge difference in her livelihood. And he acknowledges that before the entire, disciples who are around him. And that gives me hope. Even if I do a little thing to please him, he acknowledges that. Need not necessarily be before people, but he sees. So, you guys also reflect on what these incidences make you think of Jesus, and I'll come back with the second part of this series next week. I'll talk to you later. Bye.